Hello, everybody. Well, we might have rested on our laurels for a while because of completing the 10 stages, which was so amazing. I was particularly blown away by the 8th stage, and then 9th and 10th just coming in kind of quickly upon that, in the sense that being a person who has been acculturated to react and to function via stress and the think of gotta get it done sort of routine, then at that stage, not that I've reached that stage by any means, but at that stage where you get rather into a thing where you sort of sit back and let it happen, and you stop trying to sort of feel it's all depending on you, and you just have to just go ahead with it, and there's no other option. And rather, you take a trust in the universe. You put your trust in all the Buddhas, all the other advanced Bodhisattvas, all the good beings in the world, and even the good hearts of all the animals in the world and the humans, and you decide that it will happen, that you will be a Buddha, that all beings will become free of suffering through your effort and the effort of countless others, and therefore you don't have to sort of overdo the messianic aspect, individual messianic aspect. Although having done so has gotten you to the 6th and 7th levels, but then the 8th is where you kind of cool down and rely on spontaneity. And if you think of it in Tibetan Buddhism, of course, so this is Indian text, and from ancient India, at a time when the Mahayana was returning into India by the blessings of the underworld beings, the Naga dragons, and of course Nagarjuna, and before him Nagasena, and these people with the name, these monks, mendicants with the word Naga in their name, as Buddha had predicted. And so they are bringing Buddha's non-dual thing back because the Indian civilization and culture was ready for that by that time. After around 500 years, almost 500 years of the Buddha's presence, and the presence of the community deriving from him, his children, you could say, sort of making this concept of freedom and liberation sort of very central aspect of Indian culture, and placing it as the highest aim of life, beyond pleasure, wealth, and sort of religious duty or cultural duty. And then liberation, moksha, was added from around Buddha's time with the Upanishads and Vedanta and Buddha and the Jains. And it became kind of central thanks to the nonviolent mendicant army that the Buddha formed as a natural general, with taking the battle for goodness away from external military warriors into internal heroes and heroines, sort of warriors, both genders, battling the inner enemy of hatred and lust and greed, and also especially delusion and fanatical worldviews, rigid worldviews, rigid convictions, fundamentalist kind of attitudes, and moving the culture toward openness and flexibility and resilience and gentleness and friendliness. And by that time then, people were naturally happier, and they had more personal energy, and they were less subordinated to the caste, authoritarian type of personality structure. And therefore, non-dualism wasn't completely unbelievable to them and inconceivable to them, and wouldn't lead to kind of nihilism and depression and a sense of disillusionment with anything spiritual. And therefore, they were ready for that. And that's where this comes from. And then the tradition in Indian Buddhism was that the Tantrikas, the great Nagarjuna, Aryadeva, etc., the great Panditas were also Siddhas. And so secretly they had their secret practice, esoteric practice, all of which had to do with the Bodhisattva motivation to liberate all beings, free them from suffering, heal them. And that motivation caused one, of course, to not be content with waiting, a million lifetimes to be able to really effectively work to free them, to join in the number of liberated beings, enlightened Buddhas, which are also infinite. But the number of beings to be liberated are also infinite. So to join that number and add another infinity to the, going beyond numbers, going into inconceivability, but nevertheless working hard to do that. Therefore, the idea of accelerating that evolution into a lifetime, 7 lifetimes, 3 lifetimes, 7 lifetimes, 16 lifetimes, maximum for someone who really keeps up that discipline, is overwhelming. The temptation to engage naturally into the subtle body. And for example, all the way in which the ninth Bodhisattva stage and the 10th one and the 8th one are described, it has to do with, from the 7th actually, even, where the Bodhisattva manifests many bodies. So they have a kind of rehearsal, let's say, of a Buddha's ability. Remember, a Buddha has 3 bodies. The Buddhas are all one energy, unified with channeling the clear light. But there are individuals who are channeling it, of course. And so then just to think about their inconceivable activities, there's this idea of the 3 bodies of Buddha. And those are 2 material ones and one spiritual or mental one. And the mental one is the reality body, and of course it's indivisible. But then just for conceptually to divide it, the 2 material ones are the beatific body, which is a subtle body that's sort of everywhere, enjoying being one with all the other Buddhas, sort of in speech place, in between body and mind, in the speech zone, the virtual reality zone of the speech. And so that's the beatific body, as I call it, or enjoyment body, other people call it. And then the emanation body is where that being that is present everywhere and is empathetically identified with all beings and thinks they are all beings, feels beings from within beings as non-dual from the beings, and then manifests embodiments, not because they can't change the being from within the being, because the being has to change itself in order to open up to feel the clear light and so on. So they have to interact with them in some way because they can't see that beatific body, the being who's very stuck on the division, the alienation of self and other, self and universe. And so they have to appear to them as something, so then they manifest because they are one with all energy. The infinite energy of clear light enables them to manifest embodiments. So that process begins kind of, you could say, in rehearsal, with like an impure nirmanakaya, you could call it. Or they call it the impure illusory body, or the impure, I prefer, magical body. And so they have a sense of presence everywhere, beginning from being wide open through the 6th Bodhisattva stage of presence, then the 7th one of art. The art is how to manifest all those bodies, and some of them can be, or manifest those environments, those inanimate, supposed not a sentient being, but just a planet or a place or a mandala, to manifest Buddha-Garland, to manifest for beings. And from the 7th stage, you're beginning to do that. And that is really like the magic body practice of the Tantras. So in a way, in the Tantras, in a single life, one who's really developed and has like past life already thing going and has the living tradition, and this is what the Tibetans more brought out from the last few hundred years of where it came open. But this was kept hidden for 600 years from the larger culture in India, because although they were ready for non-duality, they weren't necessarily quite ready for individual kingship. The kings wanted still to be the king in the societies. So they weren't ready for this sort of coronation idea and this idea of the individual taking the burden and executing it faster and compressing billion lifetimes into 1 or 3 or 7 or 16 lifetimes of sort of material development, of development in speech and development in the body, in the art of embodiment, multiple embodiment, etc. You know. So that remained esoteric until around the 5th century, 500s, the late 400s and the 500s, and then it began to a little bit leak out. And by the 600s, finally, you know, the great Chandrakirti wrote how to fit it together with the exoteric pandithood and the exoteric bodhisattva development and the science of emptiness and relativity and so on, and the ethic of the bodhisattva. And it began to be fit together with him by his great recovery of the tradition of the Guhya Samaja, the esoteric community, and all of the other great traditions, you know. The unexcelled yoga and all of the action tantra, the performance tantra, or you could say action tantra, performance tantra, yoga tantra, and unexcelled yoga tantra, which then gets divided into mother and father tantras, or in Nyingma, in the old form, it gets divided into Maha, Anu, and Ati tantras in the Mahayoga tantras. So this is from before that, but yet it creates a framework that is used by the tantra, but the stages are moved through faster by moving through in the subtle dream world level, sort of virtual level. It's sort of like high-tech kind of thing within the great Buddhist scientific universities. It's really marvelous. Marvelous. So that's the Buddhist's own sense of history. The Westerners have no way of dating all of this because the Indian culture, the way it worked with their publishing and printing and their whole thing about text, they didn't print because of the paper substances were not immune to the tropical monsoon cycle, and they had to recopy and rewrite things every few generations. And also they still had that aspect of spirituality having to be oral and memorizing things and extraordinary memories and so on. So therefore the textual record is not really give you a proper sense of dating. And so they have to make up all kinds of things. And then they go from where things are translated into Chinese as the only way they can try to date what happened in India. Pretty much, because the kings are not taken seriously by the Buddhist community, which was a huge community. In that 1,000 years of what is known as classical Indian civilization, Sanskrit civilization, the Buddhist community they had all the universities. They had the major universities, really. Toward the end, the kings began to have around their courts kind of, things, but they couldn't have the vast university because they couldn't accept students from any but the Brahmin or Kshatriya castes, the ruling caste, the elite. They couldn't accept from the larger mass of people, whereas the Buddhist universities could. So they allowed bubbling up talent and genius coming from all levels, and even from women, although in the last part, the sort of male side and the kings and the sort of social controlling people who were trying to kind of reinstitute the caste system and recapture the women back into their social system. So the women universities did not develop, unfortunately. But they had their own outlet in the esoteric communities. So these became huge in the last 500 years, up from 600 to 1100 approximately, of the Common Era. Anyway, that's a little history background. And then we go into the next set of 10 called the 10 concentrations. And it'll take us a couple of sessions to get through. And we would certainly think by having come to the 10th Bodhisattva stage at the end of the 10 stages, 10 Bodhisattva stages, or nowadays people are calling these the 10 grounds. But I don't know, coffee grounds, polo grounds. I think ground doesn't actually have in its connotation the idea of a stage, which leads to another stage. You know what I mean? which is also a place. A stage is a place, but then there's other stages, when you have a stage. And so it's a ground. Stage is a ground. You walk around on a stage. But it also, there's another stage, higher stage and a higher stage. So I think stage, the old word is still better. Okay, so the book 27, the 10 concentrations. And here, although probably we want to think still for quite a while in the sutra, up to the practice of universal good and the manifestation of Buddha chapter, up to the entry into the realm of reality chapter. It's quite a lot still. In other words, quite a lot still, which is sort of framed as being in the 49 days in a kind of bardo for the entire planet, let's say. The bardo for the entire planet is the time of Buddha's enlightenment, which means the time when that being who had been a high stage Bodhisattva for a long time, and who came down and kind of abandoned their sort of sense of being in a state of realization to become a human again, and then to develop the stages and the practices to reach to enlightenment as a human, and to bring that sort of Brahma level, Brahma heaven level, Pure Land level Buddhahood, let's call it, or sort of close to Buddhahood, almost where you can hardly tell the difference between a high-level Bodhisattva and a Buddha, except, of course, there's still a huge difference. But, mentally, in many ways, they're almost similar, but they just don't have the embodiment to reach everywhere in the universe, quite in the same way as a Buddha. And therefore, they make very strong similes of like a tiny puddle versus an ocean. But nevertheless, the final achievement of coming back into the human plane, which is the best biological vehicle in which to really become one with the whole universe, including the people who are really seriously suffering, as well as the gods, all the different types of gods, and then be one with all of them, and be able to work with all of them like a Buddha can, and be actually without having your complete, powerful bliss void, bliss, freedom, indivisible energy present even in the hells and things, which is inconceivable, of course. Inconceivable. You're one with the beings in the hells, and yet you bring to that a kind of diamond energy of bliss, freedom, indivisible, that cannot be destroyed by whatever degree of suffering you completely connect to. And you therefore connect to it only in a liberating way, where you bring people out of it, have the ability to bring beings out of it. And that's something. That's the inconceivability of the Buddha state, of the Buddha stage, the Buddha omnipresence.
I'm not sure I understand.
That's okay. That's okay. I'm sorry. I don't have time to clarify. But just listen to the reading. You'll get better. At that time, the world honored one, the Lokajeshta, the Bhagavan. Bhagavan is the bliss lord, the fortunate one, actually. But in Chinese society, because of the idea of elder being so important in Chinese culture, so Lokajeshta means the elder of the world, the senior of the world, or the elder of the world, in that sense, most respected. So world-honored one was at the site of enlightenment in a forest in the country of Magadha. So in other words, although this is still the moment, and he's still present in every zone of the universe, including the highest realm of the desire realm where the 10 stages was taught, the stage of the control of others' emanations. And even they said that a Bodhisattva in these upper stages would be in the Brahma kingdom and so on, like Pure Land level places. And yet, so he's still everywhere, so he's still there. But now they're focusing more on, once they do the 10 stages, on the fact that he's also still under the Bodhi tree in the human plane. Because they're coming around to readdressing again the human plane. Because that's the key, that's the difference between the Buddha and Brahma, is that the Brahma still is aloof in his high heaven, somewhat. Although, in a way, from his perspective, he's kind of everywhere, and he does worry about everybody, they say. He didn't create them, he didn't put them in their bad situation, and he wants to help them as much as he can, and therefore, he wants to be a Buddha himself, and when somebody else gets to be a Buddha, he wants to help them. And he totally works to help the Buddha. It would be like Yahweh announces everywhere to everybody. Look, it's great. I'm glad you guys like me, and I try to bless you as much as I can. But, I want you to learn from Buddha how to become same plane and actually go beyond and really be able to help others. That's what I need you to do. If God would say that to the being. And that's what he did in India. And the Indians heard that. And that made them more relaxed about, they have that thing in Hinduism where he's the creator, and then there's the preserver, Vishnu, and then the destroyer. Brahma is the creator, and then the preserver is Vishnu, and then the destroyer is Shiva. And then they kind of go back and forth. Well, each one is all three, and yet there are three of them with the three aspects, and so God has all three of them, but each one is all three of them. So that they wouldn't have that more relaxed thing, which enabled them to have the earliest living continuous community of Jews that there is, the earliest Christian living continuing community in Kerala in South India, and then later absorb the three Abrahamic traditions the way they have somewhat. There's always a little stress, but they have. Also keep alive the Jain tradition, Buddhist tradition, and some other ones, other ascetic ones that are not so well known, and even create new religions within India. And it's always been like that. And then whenever they get where they want to have one monopoly religion, like in the country of Pakistan created by the British and Bangladesh, or now in this attempted effort by the Hindutva fundamentalists to do that in India, which won't work because it's not their nature of the culture. But that's what made them a great melting pot. And actually, rather than America being the first one, they really were the first melting pot culture, because the subcontinent of India has like 100 countries, or at least 30, 40 provinces they now call it, but they have different languages and so on, quite different. Like they're precursor of the economic community European Union, the Indian subcontinent was. And China should take a lesson from that, because they also have multiplicity of local cultures and dialects and things like that. The only thing that was consistent was the writing system, character system. And then that makes them subject to imperialism, which they're not realizing that they do that. All right. But we're now focusing on Buddha back under the tree, because we're shifting down from the Brahma realm where we reached with the 10 stages, and going down to where in the latter part of the sutra, where we get into the entry of the realm of reality, we're into how the humans interact with this great vision after the 49 days. And within this sutra that's addressed. And we're that's why I think the refocus comes back in book 27 to the assembly that he never left under the tree, or why he also was all up in those other places. Having just attained perfect enlightenment, you see, still that moment, 49-day long moment of his just attaining enlightenment, in the hall of universal light, which is described at the beginning of the sutra, you will remember. He entered the Buddha's concentration on the absolute instant. Woo! That's the instant that contains all time. The whole illusion of time is in that instant. The whole past, beginningless, infinite past, and infinite future is there in that instant. That means that's the emptiness instant. And that's the freedom instant. And by the inherent spiritual power of universal knowledge, manifested the body of a realized Buddha, pure and untrammeled, not relying on anything, with no clinging to objects, abiding in the ultimate tranquility of cessation, endowed with, that's nirvana, nirodha, sensation. That's Patanjali's, Chittavriti nirodha, with no clinging to objects, abiding in the ultimate tranquility of sensation, endowed with great power, without any attachments, able to cause all beholders to gain awakening, appearing as appropriate in accord with the time, always abiding in one form, which is no form. Inconceivably present, in other words, and absent, while simultaneously absent, therefore present in the most detached, transparent manner, wide open, freedom manifesting manner. He was with many great enlightening beings, as many great enlightening beings as atoms in 10 Buddha lands, all of whom were of the rank of coronation, had fulfilled enlightening practices as measureless and boundless as the cosmos, and had attained the enlightening being's concentration state of universal vision. With great compassion, they brought peace and calm to all sentient beings. Their powers and mastery were the same as those of Buddhas. By their wisdom, they profoundly penetrated and expounded the truth and were endowed with universal knowledge. They had conquered all devils and demons, and though they entered into the world, their minds were always calm. They dwelled in the non-dwelling liberation of enlightening beings, the unlocated, non-local, the non-dwelling, non-local nirvana they had, meaning it's everywhere. It's not located in some place as opposed to another place. In that sense, you don't dwell particularly in this place or that, rather you're everywhere. That's the non-dwelling liberation of enlightening beings. Their names were indestructible knowledge, peerless knowledge, knowledge of meanings and expressions, supreme knowledge, eternally equanimous knowledge, dragon knowledge, consummate knowledge, well-trained. Dragon knowledge are those underworld Naga dragons, and who brought back the Mahayana. Consummate knowledge, well-turned knowledge, immensely powerful knowledge, inconceivable knowledge, unhindered knowledge, masterful knowledge, knowledge of universal service, rational knowledge, adaptable knowledge, knowledge of mastering all teachings, knowledge of truth, dispassionate knowledge, space-like knowledge, vast knowledge, forceful knowledge, worldly knowledge, knowledge of Buddhahood, true knowledge, holy knowledge, illuminate knowledge, boundless knowledge, adorned with mindfulness, arrived at the limit of space, natural adornment, most profound realm, comprehending what is so and what is not, great light, eternal light, understanding the seed of Buddhahood, mind king, one practice, always manifesting spiritual power, sprouts of wisdom, abode of virtues, lamp of truth, illumining the world, sustaining the world, most serene, supreme, unexcelled, incomparable, peerless, unhindered action, flames of light, moonlight, one atom, steadfast practice, showering the realm of true teaching, supreme banner, universal adornment, eye of wisdom, objective eye, cloud of wisdom, spellbinding king, non-dwelling vows, mind of knowledge, mind king, inner awareness, abiding in enlightened knowledge, forceful power of spells, earth-sustaining power, beautiful, important earth-sustaining power, where she was around, or she, beautiful moon, peak of the polar mountain, jewel summit, universal illumination, charismatic king, wheel of knowledge, great power, dragon-like, straightforward action, non-regressive, holding the banner of the teaching, unforgetting, caring for all beings, inconceivable certain knowledge, freely unbounded knowledge, inexhaustible treasury of wonderful teaching, sun of knowledge, sun of truth, treasury of knowledge, luster of knowledge, universal vision, true vision, diamond insight, diamond knowledge, diamond flame, diamond wisdom, universal eye, son of Buddhahood, holding the indestructible secret meaning of the Buddha, adornment of knowledge of the sphere of universal eye, and so on. So those are all names. I just want to say about that, in translation from the Chinese, these are all names. And they translate the names because Chinese, like Tibetan too, actually, they don't do well with polysyllabic names and polysyllabic words, even long polysyllabic words, like a really long name because of a compound name. And so they translated, like flower ornament is a translation for Huayen, which is a translation for Avatamsaka, which means something that hangs down, which is a garland. You know, you're taking flowers and ornamenting them into a lei, like you get when you go to Hawaii, when you get off the airplane. They give you this weave of flowers, you know, woven into a necklace. And so then you get a flower ornament through a translation from Chinese, because they're going character by character. But when you have lists of names like in this thing, it's like almost like a chant. Nobody knows who these people are except the famous ones like Manjushri and Maitreya and Samantabhadra and so on. But still, it gives you a kind of incantatory sense of an assembly of people. So to translate in this way, literally, makes it seem unreal, that they're unreal as people. It would be like if you translated Abraham, Abba, you know, and Rahim, which means compassionate. So you would say, compassionate dad. So compassionate dad went here, compassionate dad went there. But then when you hear Abraham, you know it as a name. You see, so in India they did. So it's okay to do this, because we don't know these Indian names and who they are any more than we know this. But we just have to remember when we reach those lists that these are sort of cosmic beings, and they're sentient beings in a way, enlightened beings. Okay, and so on. Son of Buddha, and so on, like his last one, adornments of knowledge of the sphere of the universal eye. So, Mahachakshu, Gochara Jnana Bhushana, or something like that. There were as many such enlightening beings as atoms in 10 Buddha lands, who had all cultivated the same practices of roots of goodness of enlightening beings with Vairochana Buddha in the past. So remember, this is Shakyamuni Buddha's enlightenment on earth. But remember, he's kind of like Vairochana Buddha, manifesting Shakyamuni Buddhas in numerous planets, infinite numbers of planets simultaneously. So Vairochana is seen as sort of the Ur-Buddha in the context of the sort of vision of this magnificent Huayen. Then the great enlightening being, universal I, he was the last one, Mahachakshu, imbued, or Vishvachakshu, I don't know the original, imbued with the spiritual power of the Buddha, rose from his seat, bared his right shoulder, knelt with his right knee on the ground, joined his palms in respect, and said to the Buddha, "World-honored one, I want to ask the completely enlightened one about something. Please permit me to do so." The Buddha said, "You may ask whatever you want. I will explain for you and I will gladden you." Universal I said, "How many concentrations and liberations have the enlightening being, universally good Samantabhadra, and the enlightening beings who live by the vows and practice of Samantabhadra universal good attained, that they may enter and exit and abide at rest in the great concentrations of enlightening beings, and by skillfully entering and emerging from the inconceivable vast state of concentration of enlightening beings, are able to command all concentrations with ceaseless mystical powers?" The Buddha said, "Very good, universal I. You are asking this for the benefit of the enlightening beings of past, future, and present. The enlightening being, universally good, Samantabhadra Bodhisattva, is now here, already capable of freely accomplishing inconceivable spiritual effects, beyond those of all enlightening beings, rarely encountered, born of immeasurable enlightening practices. He has purified the great vows of enlightening beings, and is unregressing in all the practices he carries out. He has already attained innumerable aspects of transcendence, unhindered access to memory, and the inexhaustible powers of elucidation, thoroughly pure and uninhibited. He compassionately aids all beings through the power of his fundamental vows, forever unwearying. You should ask him. He will explain to you those concentration powers and liberations." Then, so he commissions universally good to talk. Then the enlightening beings, remember, universally good is simultaneously present in every universe, in every atom, as well as in this universe. And this universe being an atom in mega universes. And he's in every atom of that mega universe also, in which the universe he's in, every atom of that universe, he's there in an atom. So he's the one who goes infinite. Individuating himself infinitely in infinite multi-subatomic transparticulate, ultimately, realities, Samantabhadra, and is totally good. And so in a way he's one with clear light. He, she is even beyond gender in that sense. Is one with clear light, with the infinite quiescent energy of reality, of the deepest level of emptiness and freedom. Then the enlightening beings in the assembly, hearing the name of universally good Samantabhadra, immediately attain, just hearing his name, inconceivably infinite concentration. That's because he's in a universe in every atom of every one of their bodies, being infinitely good. He's there. So they just heard the name, and then bang, they were like, without having to consciously in their conceptual gross mind and coarse mind and coarse body think, I want to be like universally good. Universally good was already there in every atom and cell of their body. So they were already into inconceivably infinite concentration, samadhis. Their minds unobstructed, silent, and unstirring. Their knowledge became immeasurably vast, their realm of experience most profound without compare. They saw countless Buddhas before them, attained the power of the enlightened, and of the same nature as the enlightened, they clearly perceived all the past, future, and present, so time and space. Wham, they were everywhere throughout it. Their blessing, because Samantabhadra is, their blessings and virtues were inexhaustible, and they were endowed with all spiritual powers. Those enlightening beings conceived respect for universally good and urgently wished to behold him. They looked all over the assembled masses, but ultimately didn't see him. They looked, nor did they see the seat on which he sat. This was because of the support of the awesome power of the enlightened, and also universally good's command of mystic power caused it to be so. Because in a way, every atom of their neurons in their eye faculty, remember the universal eye is the one asking, was if universally good was there, and in clear light was there. So they couldn't see it because they were it, were one with it. But they wanted to see him anyway, so they could recognize him. Then the enlightening being universal I said to the Buddha, this already happened once earlier when they first introduced universally good, but it happens again here. Said to the Buddha, where is the enlightening being universally good now? And the Buddha replied, the enlightening being universally good, Samantabhadra, is in the assembly at this enlightenment site near me. He has never moved. Remember, you don't move in the 8th stage, achala, immovable, because you're already everywhere. But you're not so powerfully everywhere as a Buddha, is only the difference. But you are everywhere, so you don't need to move, you don't need to go anywhere. At that, end quote, at that, universal I and the enlightening beings again searched throughout the assembly, and then said to the Buddha, quote, we still cannot find universally good Samantabhadra Bodhisattva. The Buddha said, that is so. Why can you not see him? Because the dwelling place of the enlightening being, universally good, Samantabhadra, is most profound and inexplicable. Universally good has attained boundless aspects of knowledge, entered the lion emergence concentration, attained unexcelled. Lion emergence is the Senge Vijambita, and actually means lion's expansion. And you know, when a lion or cat gets up, you know, they do like a yoga posture of the cobra. You know, they sit on their haunches, you know, and then they stretch out their front paws, and then they arch their back like that, and maybe yawn or something, you know, which in a way is opening the central channel, actually. Yawning does. And they like stretch like that. And that's one meaning of Vijrambhita. And also there's a sexual meaning of Vijrambhita. Expansion, you know, a lion's expansion. So lion emergence is correct, of course, but it has this very powerful, it's like a lion, like, you know, like unfettered expansion, because feeling unchallenged by any other animal. Because the idiot human with the gun is not thought of by the lion. You did in the old days. Attained unexcelled freedom of action, entered pure non-obstruction, and developed the 10 powers of the enlightened. His body is the matrix of the cosmos. That's voidness, the womb of compassion, that means. Matrix means womb, garbha, on which all enlightened ones concentrate together. In an instant, he can thoroughly realize and enter the unfragmented knowledge of the Buddha of all times. This is why you cannot see him. Then universal I hearing, so he's sort of like, Samantabhadra is kind of like a humanoid version of the beatific body of the Buddha, of all Buddhas, in a way. Only visible to 10th stage Bodhisattvas and other Buddhas. Attained 10,000 infinities of concentrations. With the power of concentration, he again looked all over, eager to see universally good, but still could not see him. The other enlightening beings could not see him either. Then universal I rose from contemplation, from concentration, and said to the Buddha, I have entered 10,000 infinities of concentrations and sought to behold universal good, but after all have not succeeded. I do not see his body or physical actions, his speech or conversation, his mind or mental activity, his seat or his place. None of them is visible. The Buddha said, so it is, so it is. Know that this is all because of the enlightening being, universally good's power of abiding in inconceivable liberation, achintya vimoksha. Remember, that's the title of this sutra. Universal I, what do you think? Can anyone explain the dwelling place of various illusory forms in magical writings? Universal I said, No. The Buddha said, universal I, if illusory forms and illusions cannot be explained, how much less can one enter or see the esoteric physical realm, the esoteric verbal realm, or the esoteric mental realm of the enlightening being universally good, Samantabhadra. Why? Because the realm of universally good is extremely profound, inconceivable, without measure, beyond measure. To sum it up, the enlightening being universally good, by means of adamantine wisdom, pervades the cosmos of realities, yet does not course in any world or dwell anywhere. He knows that the bodies of all beings are not bodies and have no coming or going. He has attained inexhaustible, undivided, free spiritual powers, independent, uncontrived, inactive, reaching the ultimate bounds of the cosmos. If any can get to see the enlightening being universally good, or get to attend him, or get to hear his name, or think about him, or remember him, or believe in him, or strive to observe him, or orient themselves toward him, or properly seek him, or initiate vows, continuing uninterrupted, all will gain benefit. None of this is in vain. Even though you can't see him, if you keep trying, it's not in vain. Then universal I and all the other enlightening beings, their hearts conceiving longing to behold the enlightening being universally good, spoke these words. Honor to all the Buddhas, honor to the enlightening being universally good, Samantabhadra Bodhisattva. Saying this 3 times. Honor to all the Buddhas, honor to the enlightening being Samantabhadra. Honor to all the Buddhas, honor to the Bodhisattva Samantabhadra. Saying this 3 times, they bowed in respect. At that point, the Buddha said to the enlightening being universal I and the others in the assembly, offspring of the Buddhas, you should bow to universally good again and earnestly entreat him. And you should look upon the 10 directions with utmost single-mindedness and visualize the body of universally good before you, thinking thus that universally good is omnipresent throughout the cosmos. Believe deeply, detach from everything, vow to practice the same undertaking as universally good, and enter non-dual true reality. The body of universally good appears everywhere in all worlds, with comprehensive knowledge of the differences and faculties of all beings, assembling the path of universally good in all places. If you can initiate such a great vow, then you will be able to see the enlightening being universally good, Samantabhadra Bodhisattva. Now universal I and the other enlightening beings, hearing the Buddhas say this, bowed their heads to the ground and sought to get to see the great being universally good. Then the enlightening being universally good, by the power of liberated spiritual faculties, manifested physical bodies in accord with their needs, causing all those enlightening beings to see universally good, near the Buddha, sitting on a lotus seat, in the midst of this assembly of all the enlightening beings. They also saw him with all the Buddhas in all other worlds, continuously coming from there. They also saw him with all those Buddhas, expounding all practices of enlightening beings, revealing the path of omniscience, explaining all enlightening beings' spiritual powers, distinguishing all enlightening beings' charismatic virtues, and showing the Buddhas of past, present, and future. At this point, universal I and all the other enlightening beings, witnessing this miracle, were overjoyed, and all bowed to the enlightening being universally good with respect, as if they were seeing all the Buddhas of the 10 directions. So this is marvelous, you know. There is this kind of thing. In the great late Indian Buddhism, which was from the 600s, 500s probably, up until the 1200s, or late 1100s. All 3 vehicles, main vehicles, within which there are many vehicles, of course, but all 3 of them, the individual vehicle, the universal vehicle, and the diamond vehicle, all 3, total internested, interconnected, were working through the openness and the open-mindedness of the Indian civilization, and the gentleness, and the worship of the female, and the openness of Indian civilization from that time. And that's what they then developed further and refined in Tibet, such that they sort of expanded and universalized the individual to individual. Here the Buddha is speaking to universal I, and he's introducing universal I to the universally good reality of everything, of every atom, of every cell, even every cell in their own ordinary body. And even having then that personified as a universally good Bodhisattva, Samantabhadra Bodhisattva, universally good enlightening being. And so the Dzogchen, which translates Mahasandhi in Sanskrit, which means actually not great perfection, it means great connection. In a way, infinite connection is great perfection, of course. But on the other hand, the word Sandhi means connection. And I don't want to go into that, but how it got to be known as perfection. But it's connection. And so this is the magical, marvelous thing, even here in the sutra, and he's talking esoteric too, Samantabhadra. Mentions the word esoteric, guya, rahasya, which is the word used in Tantra. And this comes from 500 years before Tantra. It's explicitly, textually available in Indian culture. But it's already there, of course, with Nagarjuna and company, as it was already there with Buddha and Shakyamuni Buddha. And it's there from the beginning, but it's revealed according to the tolerance of the culture and the people, is the point. It's all there now, but it's as much as we're capable of seeing now, of course, is the thing. So in a way, this is like a Dzogchen initiation. And what it just occurred to my mind, I remember this wonderful thing in one of the great Dzogchen masters, I forget, in Tibet, who, remember, they were receiving what is called pointing out instructions by their guru, and somehow one of the pointing out instruction was given to one of the disciple, and then that disciple suddenly had a vision, and somebody said, I think to the Dzogchen master, the way he pointed out, it says, "Do you hear that dog barking in the far village, remotely far away? Do you hear the barking of that dog?" And then the guy, yes. And he had the great connection, the Mahasandhi, the great perfection. He sort of received the pointing out. And so when we hear that, lately people think, oh gosh, so great, enlightenment in the dog. But actually, when he really heard it, and the great connection thing, in the bark, the sound of the bark was the name Samantabhadra Bodhisattva. And in the movement of that sound was the presence of Samantabhadra Bodhisattva on every tooth in the dog's mouth as it barked. And every cell everywhere in between, in the air, and in the body of the being, and in the body of the guru. But we don't usually think of it in this inconceivable liberation magical way. We just think of it in some ordinary way. But the ordinary is constituted by Samantabhadra Bodhisattvas everywhere. It's all clear light. It's all transparent, we have to realize. Anyway, I just thought of the dog. The dog, Samantabhadra and the dog. Okay, so we're seeing all the Buddhas of the 10 directions. Then by the great spiritual power of the Buddha, as well as the power of faith of the enlightening beings. And this kind of word of faith is not a subject-object kind of faith of where you have a concept and then you have an idol, and your concept becomes your idol, and then you project your idol out into something, and then you say, oh yeah, there it is. It's not that kind of faith, although it could infuse that kind of faith, which would then open it wide. But it's still, when it's conceptually, it's still dualistic. But this is the faith that's known as, prasanna, prasada, which means transparency, actually. It means clearness, clear faith, they sometimes will translators will say. And it means, a kind of openness, faith which is openness to the thing you're faithful about. So it's sort of, there's no difference between the faith transports you to the thing, like a non-dual feeling of connection to it, okay? Rather than a dogmatic holding it out as something apart from you, which you subordinate yourself to. It's rather something you open yourself to, unify with. That's the word, whereas faith can be the two kinds. This is the deepest one. As well as the power of faith of the enlightening beings, and the power of the original vow of universally good. They are spontaneously reigned 10,000 kinds of clouds, such as clouds of various flowers, clouds of various garlands, clouds of various fragrances, clouds of various aromatic powders, clouds of various canopies, clouds of various robes, clouds of various ornaments, clouds of various jewels, clouds of various burning incenses, and clouds of various streamers. Unspeakably many worlds quaked. Celestial music played and was heard afar throughout unspeakably many worlds. Great light radiated and illuminated unspeakably many worlds, causing the states of misery to become extinct, adorning unspeakably many worlds, causing unspeakably many enlightening beings to enter into the practice of universally good, and causing Samattabhadra, causing unspeakably many enlightening beings to thoroughly fulfill the vows of the practice of universal good and attain unexcelled, complete, perfect enlightenment. Then the enlightening being, universal I, said to the Buddha, world-honored one, the enlightening being universally good is one who abides in great power, in incomparability, in unsurpassability, in non-regression, in equanimity, in indestructibility, in all differentiated things, in all undifferentiated things, in the abode of the skillful mind of all beings, in absorption or trance in liberation, entrancement in liberation, free in all things. Still free, but still there. The Buddha said, it is so, it is as you say. The enlightening being universally good has immeasurable pure qualities, the qualities of peerless adornment, the qualities of innumerable jewels, the qualities of inconceivable oceans, the qualities of infinite forms, the qualities of boundless clouds, infinite incomparable qualities, the qualities of inexhaustible truths, untold qualities, the qualities of all Buddhas, qualities that cannot ever be exhaustively extolled. Then the Buddha said to the enlightened being universally good, seeing them, infinite embodiments everywhere, in every atom and in front of every person at the human size and the human dimension. You should explain the 10 concentrations. Okay, this is now this book for universal I and the enlightening beings in this assembly, so that they may be able to enter them and fulfill the practical vows of universal good. The 10 samadhis these are. Because the great enlightening beings expound these 10 concentrations, they enable the enlightening beings of the past, present, and future to attain emancipation. What are the 10 concentrations? Okay, make a note of these, remember these as we go along through this book. 1, the great concentration of universal light. A samadhi in which you as light experience everything else as pure light. There's nothing gross or coarse or substance that isn't light. All substance is light. So in a way it's all everywhere as well as being where it is, having seemed to be. So right away, that's the whole deal. But it's only the first great concentration, samadhi. 2, the great concentration of subtle light. Subtle meaning maybe invisible light, light seeing itself, and therefore really not seeing, seeing while not seeing, so subtle. 3, the great concentration of successive journeying to the Buddha-lands, because of why not? Without moving, journeying without journeying, because remember the speed of light, Einstein noticed, speed of light is the limit of materiality, and therefore it's everywhere. It can't go bigger than, because its mass becomes infinite. That's why it's an absolute for materialists, because mass is lost at that speed. So light goes beyond mass. Light is the bridge between mass and no mass, but yet omnipresence. Okay, so the third concentration is the concentration of successive journeying to the Buddha lands. So that means immediately when you know it's all light, you go straight to Prabhasvara, same word for clear light, which is the word of the highest Brahma heaven. But then even in the highest part of the highest Brahma heaven are the Buddha lands. And so then since you are there, you journey to them, they're saying, without having to journey. Okay, 4, the great concentration of the action of the pure profound mind. So there's the clear light, which is everywhere and needs make no action, because all things are already done and already enacted. And yet that's the great action. And yet within that already enacted, anything that needs action can draw out action from that. Seems to draw out to the being that needs, but doesn't seem like it's been a movement to the being that's everywhere. And therefore that's inexhaustibility of the action, of the energy is like that. 5, the great concentration of knowledge of the stores of adornments of the past. So this is where then the past is seen to have already been enlightened. One's Buddha nature was the main thing, and one was already one with clear light. And one's whole suffering in the past, if one had been remembering it before like that, is re-envisioned as being pure Buddhahood, pure clear light and compassionate and loving emanation and manifestation. 6, therefore you can remember the whole past because it's no longer painful to you, because you realize the pain is only delusion. Pain is illusory. You are lucid about the pain, and therefore the pain is bliss. It does not destroy bliss. Bliss destroys it, actually. 6, it's delusion. 6, the great concentration of the treasury of the light of knowledge. And this is where the knowledge is awareness, and the light is awareness. It's not an object, sort of seemingly inanimate thing, presence, but it's pure awareness. And that makes it a treasury, because by being awareness, it connects to the freedom, it brings the freedom in connection with the bliss, and that becomes then is able to interconnect with all beings out of love for them. It becomes the love for them. It becomes their happiness and so forth. It self-shares. It automatically, spontaneously self-shares with them as their health, their life, their bliss, their Buddha nature, their actual reality. Although, which they still suffer though, because they don't know that that's their reality. 7, but in that concentration, the Bodhisattva, the enlightening being, knows it for them. But they have to also get it themselves. So the enlightening being manifests out of bliss, out of love, whatever they need to help them toward that realization. 7, the great concentration of knowledge of the adornments of the Buddhas of all worlds. So then this is then connecting to the Buddhas, because it's still a Bodhisattva concentration, still Samantabhadra, and it has to help, the Buddhas have to help them pass the obstacle of any kind of sense of separation. And even as they are trying to help the beings to be free of that, they really absorb the power and the energy of all the Buddhas' help. And they transmit that to the beings, Samantabhadra does. 8, the great concentration of the differentiated bodies of sentient being. So there, one does not lose sight of their delusion created, and it's their delusion, no longer yours, but their delusion becomes your mirror wisdom energy. And so that's where you, in that 8th one, the great concentration of the differentiated bodies, so you see them as alien. Differentiated can mean alienated, because they feel they are other from other things, so therefore they're differentiated. But you see that, however, in a samadhi, as you don't ignore it, you don't see through it. You create the depth of focus where you can see how they feel, and therefore interact with them precisely. 9, your bliss modulates itself down to interact with them precisely. 9, the great concentration of freedom in the elemental cosmos. And here's where the freedom element, the emptiness element, the clear light element becomes dominant. And this is where the bliss begins to leak into and leak through the barriers of the self-alienation of the suffering beings. Because they kind of leak through. They discover it around the edges and in the core, etc. And finally, 10, the great concentration of the unimpeded wheel. Wheel of time, but he doesn't say time, but it's unimpeded wheel, meaning that any kind of thing that may turn and that rolls is now unimpeded because it's already everywhere. And it comes out, the teaching, it's like you're teaching a student, and suddenly the student's understanding resonates with the teaching, and you as transmitting it, actually, you then resonate with the understanding, because you're only transmitting and you don't necessarily understand. The understanding is the Buddha understanding. And so then it becomes an unimpeded wheel of interconnection between you and the Samantabhadra oriented Bodhisattva, the Buddha, the Samantabhadra Buddha, all the Samantabhadra Buddhas, and then the beings who need some goodness. They find it coming out of themselves. So they find their own totally good Buddha nature that every being, even the worst criminal, the worst devil has, which makes them able to live, actually. It's their life force. Even they completely alienate, they have the power to completely alienate from because they give their whole power to delusion. These 10 great concentrations the great enlightening beings can skillfully enter. All the Buddhas of past, future, and present have expounded, will expound, and are expounding them. If enlightening beings gladly and respectfully cultivate and practice them without slacking, they will be able to accomplish them. Such people are called Buddhas. They are called those who have arrived at thusness, and they are called people who have attained the 10 powers, and they are called guides, and they are called great leaders, and they are called omniscient, and they are called all-seers, and they are called those who abide in unobstruction. All-seer means rishis, sarvarishis, and they're vishvarishis, and they are called those who abide in non-obstruction, and they are called those who have comprehended all objects, and they are called masters of all spiritual truths. These enlightening beings enter into all worlds without being attached to anything in any world. They enter the realms of all beings without grasping beings. They enter all bodies without being hindered by bodies. They enter all elemental realms and know the cosmos is boundless. They draw near all Buddhas of all times and clearly see all the Buddha's teachings. They skillfully explain all worlds and comprehend all provisional names. They accomplish the pure path of all enlightening beings and are firm in all the different practices of enlightening beings. In a single instant they attain all knowledge of past, present, and future, and know all things in all times. They expound all the Buddha's teachings and turn all the irreversible wheels. In each age, past, future, and present, they realize all paths to enlightenment, and in each enlightenment comprehend what all the Buddhas say. These are the gates of the characteristics of the principles of enlightening beings. These are the gates of the knowledge and awareness of enlightening beings. These are the gates of the knowledge and awareness of enlightening beings. These are the gates of the invincible knowledge of all enlightening beings. The invincible knowledge of all means, of all arts of liberation. These are the gates of the practices vowed by the universally good enlightening being, Samantabhadra Bodhisattva. These are the gates of the undertakings of penetrating spiritual powers. These are the gates of all mnemonic command and powers of elucidation. These are the gates to the differentiations of all things of past, present, and future. These are the gates of manifestations of all Buddhas. These are the gates in stabilizing all things by universal knowledge. These are the gates to beautifying and purifying all worlds by means of spiritual powers of Buddhas. And I warrant you, these are 10 gates. So you could, in studying and memorizing and meditating on this, you could put the 10 concentrations, you could put the 10 gates together, and the 10 stages together, so they will all fit all within with that, but yet unpacking them in this way will also make them provide ladders of consciousness for you to feel the present and to feel them and to viscerally experience them. If enlightening beings enter these concentrations, they attain cosmic power that has no end, in the sense of being open to the infinite cosmic power of clear light, of the void of freedom, that it just flows through them. The force, it is the force, cosmic force that has no end. They are enabled to travel through space without hindrance. They attain the rank of spiritual sovereignty with immeasurable independence and command, like being coronated and enthroned in the world. They attain boundless knowledge, comprehending all. And being coronated and enthroned in the world with independence and command, the reason they really have that is not just because they have dominated anybody. It is because they are open to what is the nature of everybody, and everybody wants to know, wants to have their advice, because they know that it comes from their own mind. The beings so it's not a matter of domination. It's a matter of connection and unification. This kind of spiritual sovereignty, it's with immeasurable independence and command, like both independence and command. Because it's command, because their commands reinforce the independence of the people they command. This is the ruler. It is the Taoist view of the emperor, where the emperor is humbler than every one of his subjects, not lording over them, humbler than them, even though they may want to be lorded over. But then the emperor is the one who makes them find the Lord in their own openness and freedom. So it's the highest level of ratification of the individualism. So the highest command is the command through democracy, that is, ruled by the people. But it's by the sovereign in each person. So that's why Thomas Paine is so beautiful, where he has this beautiful image where you take the crown of the king, the jewels in the crown of the king or queen, which jewels represent the sense of sovereignty that the people wish the king and queen to have, the good king and queen. But then you take it and you smash it and you give back a shard of that jewel back to the being, or you ratify it in them. And then you do that. But you know, there is this second realm of that, where then the being finds the command of the enlightened ruler, which is a different thing. But we haven't reached that at all yet. But and they certainly aren't doing so imitating us with their communist parties and their dictatorships and their tsardoms, and they're trying to reinstate old domineering types of oligarchic kings, who think of themselves as higher, think of their subjects as just some cannon fodder. That no. Like being coronated and enthroned in the world. They attain boundless knowledge, comprehending all. They attain vast powers, 10 kinds perfectly fulfilled. They develop non-contentious hearts and enter dispassionate tranquility. They are compassionate and fearless as lions. They are heroes of knowledge and wisdom and light the bright lamp of truth. Again, you can fit those 10 in without the 10. All their merits and virtues cannot be fully told of. No hearers of self-enlightened ones can conceive, hearers or self-enlightened ones can conceive of them. There are a few little typos in here, Shambhala people. You really need more copy editing here. There's a put a of there, but that shouldn't be of, it should be or. No hearers or self-enlightened ones can conceive of them. These are arhats. Disciple arhats versus pratyeka arhats. But still they can't conceive of this. They attain knowledge of the realm of reality and abide in infinity, yet are able to discourse in various ways according to worldly conventions. They abide in formlessness or immateriality. It can easily penetrate the characteristics of material things. They're like Superman in that sense, or Superwoman. They can go through walls. They attain the treasury of inherent purity and are born in the pure house of the enlightened. They skillfully open up various different gates of teaching, yet by means of wisdom they know that nothing exists, in the sense of being something intrinsically real that therefore becomes an obstruction of the infinite energy of the clear light of freedom, of voidness, of emptiness. They are expert at knowing proper timing and always carry out the giving of teaching to enlighten everyone. They care for all beings and purify them all. By knowledge of expedient arts, they demonstrate the attainment of Buddhahood, yet they always carry out the practices of enlightening beings without end. Entering the realm of means of arts of universal knowledge, they manifest various great spiritual powers. Therefore, universally good, you should now analyze and expound the 10 great concentrations of all enlightening beings. All in this assembly want to hear about this. Again, you can take that paragraph, take the 10 things that explain, fit the 10 in with the 10 concentration, fit them in with the 10 stages, and you really get a deeper sense of the 10 stages. Then the enlightening being universally good, receiving the direct, because that's how you get from the linear mind that goes through these in a linear discursive way to where you see them all at once, like an enlightening being universally good, somewhat about the Bodhisattva way, where you see you get like little threads that lead you into seeing these 10 things, each in each atom, and each one in each other one, and so on. Then the enlightening, the holographic vision you cultivate of inconceivable liberation. Then the enlightening being universally good, Samantabhadra Bodhisattva, receiving the directive of the enlightening one, the enlightened one, looked at universal I and the other enlightening beings and said to them, although remember he did it from many bodies, each one sees him that's right in front of themselves. Offspring of Buddhas, what is the great enlightening being's concentration of universal light? That was the first one, remember? Here the enlightening beings have, again, 10 kinds of inexhaustible qualities. Inexhaustible knowledge of the Buddha's emergence in the world, inexhaustible knowledge of the metamorphoses of beings, inexhaustible knowledge of the world's being like a reflection, inexhaustible knowledge penetrating deeply into the realm of reality, inexhaustible knowledge skillfully dealing with enlightening beings, inexhaustible knowledge of the non-regression of enlightening beings, inexhaustible knowledge observing the meanings of all principles, inexhaustible knowledge of skillful maintenance of mental power, inexhaustible knowledge abiding in the vast spirit of enlightenment, inexhaustible knowledge abiding by all enlightening teachings, and the willpower of omniscience. These are called the 10 inexhaustible qualities of great enlightening beings. These great enlightening beings awaken 10 kinds of boundless will. This is like the decimal system, you understand? 10, 10, 10, 10. Each one adds a 0, you see. The one thing is the enlightening being's concentration, of universal good. And then that leaves 0. That's 10. Then there's 10. Then there's 10 has 10. That's 100. Then 10 has 10. That's 1,000. Then 10 has 10. That's 10,000. Then 100,000. Then million, etc. And so that's how you enter into that one. You find the infinity of the openness of each 0, and each one of these sets of 10 of these characteristics and qualities given to us in a linear form, you just got to fit into that decimal system, the decimal universally good system. The math of it, it's just a fabulous shunya, openness, zeroness, decimalness, digital reality. These great enlightening beings awaken. The quantum physicists should get over it, that they can't pin down some sort of controllable, indivisible, solid piece of mass, intrinsically real mass, that's out there as an objectivity that they can definitely get a hold with by some machine or some observation or some notation or some theory. They should get over that and get into the decimal system. By having a 0, they can fill it up with incredible things. The openness is what they should be throwing themselves into. But because of wanting to be the one scientist who gets the Nobel Prize, or who controls, or who owns, or dominates their wife or child, or whatever, their money, or I don't know what, identity, they keep desperately trying to project a reflection of that indivisible identity that you can't let go of. Out there's an indivisible objectivity that you bounce back off of. They should get over that and realize that the freedom of not being able to find any objectivity there means the empowerment of the sovereignty of their subjectivity, dealing specifically even with apparent objectivities and respecting them as facts and so forth. They're still facts, but they're facts that then they take responsibility for helping to co-create. And they become artists as well as scientists. And they should really get there. Just give it up, Give it up, as they say, in the hip-hop world, and become hip-hop scientists. It's here now. They awaken 10 kinds of boundless willpower. They awaken the boundless willpower to liberate, to free all sentient beings. The boundless willpower to attend all Buddhas. So the boundless willpower to free all sentient beings means to really support democracy. Each one should be free. Equal and free, equally free. Okay? The boundless will to see all Buddhas. The boundless will to receive and hold all Buddha teachings without forgetting it. Doesn't mean being Buddhist. It means being taking refuge in freedom, which is reality. Freedom is reality. And your refuge is in the freedom. That's the point. Not in some imprisonment in some new identity. I'm a Buddhist. Without forgetting any. The boundless will to manifest the infinite spiritual metamorphoses of all Buddhas. So find the Buddha in every being, changed into whatever. The boundless will not to abandon any enlightening practices to attain enlightened power. Because you still have to do some work, even you think that you want to get the ability to, you want to get the force. You want to channel, they say attained enlightened power, but that means your ability to channel the force. George Lucas taught us all, actually. Taught everyone, without making them Buddhists of any sense. He taught us all to be like the brother and sister now. What's her name? I forgot her name, whatever it is. The boundless will to enter into the subtle realm of all knowledge and explain all Buddha teachings. The boundless will to enter into the inconceivable vast realm of Buddhahood. The boundless will to develop profound aspiration for the Buddha's powers of elucidation, that is, his ability through speech to reach others and to receive all Buddha teachings. The boundless will to manifest all kinds of free bodies, that's the nirvana emanation body, and enter the circles of all enlightening ones and all enlightened ones. These enlightening beings have 10 kinds of knowledge of differentiation of entry into concentration. Entering into, so more 10 more kinds, more decimal system. The 10, the 10, the 10. You know, you're not linearly, you just keep making a flow chart like this. Entering into concentration in the east and emerging in the west. Entering in the west and emerging in the east. Entering in the south and emerging in the north. Entering the north and emerging in the south. Entering the northeast and emerging in the southwest. Entering the southwest and emerging in the northwest. Entering in the southwest and emerging in the northeast. Entering in the northwest and emerging in the southeast. Entering in the southeast and emerging in the northwest. Entering in the nadir and emerging in the zenith. Entering the zenith and emerging in the nadir. Three-dimensional tic-tac-toe of a samadhi. These enlightening beings have 10 kinds of knowledge. And that's dealing with the deep structure in the formation aggregate, the aggregate of mental structuring. The deep structure wherein we have a sense of up and down, left and right. We have a sense of direction, which then anchors our sense of location. And this is kind of dismantling that, being trapped in that. It doesn't mean we later can't reconstruct, but it means not being imprisoned in it. These enlightening beings have 10 kinds of knowledge of skills in entry into great concentration. They make a billion world universe a single lotus blossom and appear sitting cross-legged on this lotus blossom, covering it entirely. And in the body manifests another billion world universe, wherein there are 10 billion quadruplex earths, in each of which they manifest 10 billion bodies, each body entering into 100 sextillion billion world universe. In each of the quadruplex worlds of which they manifest 100 sextillion enlightening beings engaged in practice. The practice of each enlightening being producing 100 sextillion certain understandings. Each certain understanding causing 100 sextillion potentials to be fulfilled. Each potential developing into the non-regressive work of 100 sextillion enlightening ways. And yet the physical manifestations are neither one nor many, and not mixed up in entry into concentration or emergence from concentration. It is like the case of the Titan king Rahula, whose original body is 700 leagues tall. That's 700 add a zero, because a league is about 10 miles. So that's 7,000 leagues tall, almost the diameter of the earth. While his transformed body is 168,000 leagues tall. The half of his body emerging from the ocean is just level with the polar mountain Sumeru. Through that Titan king, though that Titan king transforms his body into a colossus, that does not destroy his original form. All the psychophysical elements are the same. His mind is not disturbed. He does not think of his transformed body as other than or of his original body as not himself. The body he was born with is always blissful, and his transformed body is always manifesting all kinds of miraculous powers. The Titan king has greed, ill will, and delusion, and is full of pride and conceit, and yet is able to transform his body in this way. How much the more so, he's a kind of demon, right? He's a Titan king. They are all dominating power beings. How much more so the enlightening beings who profoundly realize that mental states are like illusions, and that all beings are like dreams, that the appearance in the world of all Buddhas is like reflected images, that all worlds are like magical productions, that all speech is like echoes. They see reality as is and have reality as their body, knowing all things are inherently pure, realizing that the body and mind have no real substance. Their bodies are omnipresent in infinite realms, and by the great light of Buddha knowledge purify and practice all the deeds of enlightening beings. All the deeds of enlightening beings. enlightening beings in this concentration transcend the world and are detached from the world. Nothing can disturb them or overpower them. Just as when a mendicant contemplates inside the body and dwells on the view of impurity, seeing the body as impure, so do enlightening beings in this concentration observe the reality body, seeing all worlds enter the body, seeing all mundane realms and phenomena without any attachment to them. This is called the great enlightening being's practical knowledge of the first great concentration of universal light. So that's the first of the 10 concentration, and really it's quite interesting that he connects it to the ability that everyone has who has practiced mindfulness in a proper way, which is that their body scan has revealed to them the unglamorous nature, let's call it, the deglamorized nature of the body components. That when you see them from a certain angle, which we fuss with, and we put perfume on, and we do this, and go to the gym, and we have like whatever skin jobs, and whatever we do, all kinds of things to look all pretty and nice, and sort of get into a glamorous thing about it, and get all like lusted out about it. In fact, this saves us from that by being able to see that it is all filled with filth, and it's actually like meditating on one's own body as a decomposing corpse, for example, is one of the things that they do, and they are able to do it. And it doesn't mean that's not the final intrinsic reality of the body. That's the real true. No, that's not true either. But it's like getting the flexibility within the illusory visions of it, of not only be trapped in it as thinking of it as beautiful, but able to see it as repulsive, and able therefore to detach from it, and therefore to go to really move into the world of the subtle plane of the mind. So it's part of getting free. It's renunciation. It's essential. And he connects this first concentration of a high bodhisattva who's able to see beautiful adornment in everything and see the beauty of Buddha body and so on and so on and so on, light body, subtle body, but he's showing people that indeed they've been able to do that, because this sutra is helping mendicants who are a little bit stuck. Maybe they took their intrinsic reality habit and intrinsic identity habit and put it again into all things, which got stuck in repulsiveness of all things and revolting against all things. They got stuck in their renunciation. But the fact that they could completely shift into seeing it in a renunciatory way proved to them that they can shift how they identify things, that the mind has that power. So then they are having the power to shift into the first concentration, if you follow me. Beautiful. This is why Tantra, of seeing the Tantra, which you get into the beauty of the Buddha body, the subtle bodies of Buddhas and so forth, and your own majesty and magnificence. But you do that on having had the ability of being completely repulsed and seeing yourself as a corpse. Like the great yogi, Tantric yogi Milarepa, who achieved the highest level of Buddhahood in that single life. He always used to say, I don't see why people are so worried about death, so scared of death bodies. He says, I see a corpse in front of me every day. And he meant his own body. So he was completely detached to his own ordinary body. And yet he valued it as a Buddha too. But he meant that just to show people that the two are interconnected. If you want to really be beautiful, be able to see yourself as a corpse. And then don't get attached in that vision. But it will help you detach from your petty vision of vanity, your petty vanity. Okay? So that was the first. That was the first one. First great concentration of universal light. Second, what is the great enlightening beings? Oh, well, that's all right. We did a lot of orienting after being on the 10th thing. So we were going to stop because I promised my good engineer, my good friend, that I would stop at 2 o'clock because of the schedule we have today of other things. So I will stop, and actually it's good because that's already huge. And if it takes us 10 sessions to get through this, so be it. But probably now I introduced this book, the 27th book, and we will go faster with the other ones. But by the second, maybe not, if I fall into it. Because this is an amazing thing. You're going over it and you're trying to get through it. You do that, you're journeying, right? But then the goal reality pops up out of it. And then you can't help but pointing it out and dwelling on it and trying to like make it lucid to people, to read it lucidly, so it may slow down. We may end up finally where we'll do a whole session on 2 words. We'll finish in next life, and that'll be fine. Okay? Tom, you did it to me. You'll have to take over in your next rebirth if I die. All right? So that's where we reached. So let's dedicate the merit. May we quickly become Vairochanas, and thereby quickly bring all beings into the enlightening beings, Samantabhadra, Bodhisattvas. First of the 10 concentrations, the concentration of universal light. Okay? That's our dedication. Thank you very much. See you next time.